Hey guys, my name is Dave Sarabia and welcome to Environment Sketching with 3D Primitives for the Foundation Group. In this tutorial, we're going to create a fantasy environment using a structured process to help kickstart a concept into a refined line drawing. So before we start even drawing, it's always good to plan. It's kind of like using a GPS with no address. It just doesn't work, and you're gonna have a hard time going to your goal. So having a checklist would definitely help you get to that goal a lot faster and more efficiently. And over here, I have a sheet where I divided it into two checklists. In this tutorial, we're going to be doing a fantasy medieval environment. When we look at this topic, we could break it down into two different categories: medieval building and environment. And since we have our categories, we could go ahead and dive deeper into making a list of keywords. So when we're looking at medieval building, we could go ahead and start thinking about, okay, what goes into this medieval building? We got walls, windows, doors. And for the environment, we could start thinking about, okay, what goes around the building? We got plants, rocks, clouds. And the more keywords you have to describe your idea, the better and easier it's going to be to design your concept. And this process doesn't only apply to this line drawing exercise. This process also could help you develop a high finished level keyframe or a loose mood painting. So now we could get into reference gathering. I like to separate these references into three categories: real life, art, and Kickstarter. And in the real life reference, I would like to go back to that checklist and find photos that match the keywords. If I could find a few photos that complete that checklist, even better. Having a ton of reference isn't necessarily a good thing. And sometimes it could lead you out of focus and you could start to become indecisive. So keeping it simple and finding those photos that match that checklist is a good way to start. And for this phase, I would actually advise you to get a camera. Getting a camera is really awesome because not only can you use it to get design reference, but you could also practice doing composition, understanding lighting, and also capture storytelling moments. Like, I find it that having hobbies outside of concept art is very important. It helps supplement your understanding on how things work, and the more you know, the stronger your design is. So for the art reference, I'm also looking at proportion, shape, and rhythm. For the Kickstart reference, this is actually supposed to help you kickstart your idea. And whenever you're stuck, this is a great way to start getting your ideas to generate. Because I know that whenever I see a blank canvas, it does get intimidating to even know where to begin. So having this Kickstart reference would definitely help. And in the Kickstart reference, it could be any found object. It could be like an industrial tool, a printer, a speaker. It could be anything. And honestly, I think it's better to find an object that is different from your subject matter, because having that anomaly could help you break away from your real life and art reference, therefore creating your own unique design. So now that we got our reference prepared, we could now loosely explore different ideas, and this is where we can start drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Photoshop. So in Photoshop, I've created a 17 by 11 canvas, and I'm going to show you guys on what kind of brush I'm using and how to create it. So over here, I'm going to grab a hard round brush, 100% hard, and I'm going to go over here to brush settings and squash this ellipse down. I'm also going to give it a little tilt to simulate that marker pen type of look. And for me, I'm working in a difference pixel of 3 to 5. So this is normally where the range that I'm working in. And if you want it to be a little bit thicker, I'm using like a 5. but normally I would draw in 3s just to start off with. So after knowing what tool we're going to use, we're going to go ahead and start into the rough sketching phase. So I'm going to go over here to my other file. I'm going to drag over the Kickstart references. I'm going to size these up. I'm going to go ahead and spread these out across the page. And the reason why I like getting the same prop reference in all different angles, just to get like a different view of the same object. I think just having these kind of variations in different angles could spark just different ideas. So I'm going to lay that together, and I'll go ahead and merge it, lower the opacity. I'm going to also make sure that I'm going to have my reference on the other side of the screen. And I'm going to start sketching. So like what I like to do is I like to first start off just breaking down my reference. So as you can see here, I'm just breaking down the big main shapes of this object. And I'm thinking in primitive shapes. So like your basic cubes, your cylinders. I'm also looking at the proportion of these shapes. See, like over here, it's like a lot of detail, but I'm just going ahead and simplifying that into a basic cube. And over here, see, I'm not worried about like the fidelity of this sketch. You know, this is a rough sketch. It shouldn't take that long. And this is what I would call a breakdown study. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to the next one. You know, I'm just seeing like, okay, here's a cylinder, here's a box. You know, here's like a box that pops up. Here's another box that is extruded from this main cylinder that kind of tapers in. Here's another box. I'm just going to simplify all that noise in the bottom into a box. That cylinder that comes out again. And this cube, this rectangular cube that goes back into the distance. And then I'm going to go ahead and start with this side view. Just big basic shapes. I'm not worried about the details. I'm also looking at the silhouette as well. Paying attention to how that silhouette is being formed. I think this is such a really interesting transition point in how this is being attached. I think that's really cool. And again, guys, not paying attention to the fidelity of this line. We're not making an illustration. These are These are just rough sketches. You see how ugly these things are? Okay, so now, since we got our breakdown, we're gonna go ahead and create different ideations, different designs from these. And like right now I'm looking at my reference and I'm seeing like what I can use, you know. And this is all free game. You could totally, you know, change it up. You're totally not married to any of this. You know, you could erase some of it. You know, I kind of like this idea of like, oh, what if it's like a bridge, and here's like a building. And then we could go ahead and make this like a really tall building. Maybe I want to like offset like another section of this tower. So I'm going to add that. It's like, okay, it's getting somewhere. Then we're going to go with number 2. Yeah, this is a really fun angle. You know, I'm going to try the same attempt of having this really cool like bridge motif. Maybe this one has like a roof. You know, I'm not a huge fan of how this is leaning over, so I'm gonna go ahead and just straighten that out. Put a base over here. And we have some of the smaller windows. Maybe there's like a chimney over here on this side. And then as I'm doing this, I'm also looking at the silhouette, the overall silhouette. You know, I'm also thinking about our list. You know, our list with the environments, our list with the buildings. So I'm adding all those elements of like the rocks, the trees. And maybe we could try this kind of different roof. And again, in this process, we're not trying to make a pretty drawing right now. We're just loosely getting ideas really quickly. Just indicating shapes, proportions. So we're going to do it this side view. I'm just trying to like play with the orientation. Just trying to see like what can I get from all of this. And over here, I'm just thinking about the big, medium, smalls, grouping of details. You know, and just like painting as well, I'm squinting my eyes just to see like these certain shapes. Now we're off to like the second round. So normally I like to at least do 6 of these, because sometimes, you know, the first ones are not that great, and they're just kind of like warm-ups. Just moving everything aside so I could get some room. Really like the way how that thing's being hugged. So I'm gonna see if I could, you know, keep that. It's gonna add a roof over here. We got chimney. Now I'm really like thinking about where all my details are gonna lie. You know, even with these scribbles, I could already start seeing, you know, where the shape's gonna go. I'm thinking about different rhythms. And I'm still looking back at the reference board that we just made. I'm gonna try something different where I could start like duplicating just to get a different result. Just to see like what this gives me. Maybe this could be a tall tower. I still really like that negative shape. Having that negative shape in that side. So I'm still gonna try to attempt it. Over here I'm thinking about like supports, like how are these supports gonna look like. Maybe adding some more like windows. Maybe we could bump this section out. Also just think about silhouette breaks. Us humans naturally tend to always look at the silhouette first. And what's so cool about this is that you could almost do anything. You could squash it, stretch it, rotate it. This is the phase where you shouldn't be too precious. Like there's no limits in this phase. Just purely exploration. I'm squinting my eyes to see where all the details are going to be. All right, awesome. So now we have our 6 sketches. And now we're ready to go into building this in 3D. All right, so right before we get into our 3D program, let's go ahead and choose one of these sketches. And I'm liking this one over here. So let's take this sketch and move on forward, and let's go ahead and open Blender. All right, cool. Now that I have Blender open, just want to start off by saying that you could use any 3D program you want, and I just so happen to be using Blender because it's free and it's fairly easy to use. So many tutorials online, and yeah, that's kind of the reason why I'm using Blender. But you can use whatever program fits for you or that you're comfortable with, because I'm not a 3D modeler and I'm just strictly using primitive shapes. It's like very dirty concept type of 3D modeling. So any 3D program is going to work for this. So let's get into it. So right now I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to scale it. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this view into an orthographic view. I'm using my middle mouse click to change the views. And I'm going to go ahead and scale this up. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and scale this up. And I'm looking at the sketch, and I have the sketch on my left screen. I'm looking at that sketch and trying to fit that proportion. So I'm constantly looking back and forth and, just glancing at it, at my sketch. But I could also scale this down. And the reason why I'm not implementing my sketch into the program, because I'm not exactly following the sketch to the T, what's so great about that loose sketch is that I could still make some changes. I could still, or in this rough phase, I could still kind of improve the proportions and the shapes. So that's what's so great about this phase, is because it's not completely set in stone. We still have some room to play in terms of refining our shapes. So I think this is really cool that we could still have, I guess, kind of like the freedom to make this a better design. So right now I am making sure that this polygon is fitting just right. I'm also duplicating this onto the other side, scaling it down. But also I want to bring it forward. It's like having that nice silhouette pop. Maybe this shape could be longer. Now that I'm looking at this shape, I think we could also bring this higher, just to push the proportion. I also want to bring this over just a little bit. Same with this cube. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and make a prism. So I'm going to go to cylinder, and on this tab over here, I'm going to go to vertices and then turn that into a three-sided. I'm going to go ahead and slide this up. I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis. Going to go ahead and give that a 90. And then I'm going to rotate this again. Give this a negative 90. I'm going to go to wireframe, grab the vertexes, and then just move this all the way up. And then I'm going to go ahead and merge those vertices together. Also want to scale that up a little bit. Go back to solid mode. Expand this just a bit so it overhangs that cube. Or not cube, but like a rectangular prism. Scale that a bit. Cool, I'm gonna go ahead and make another prism using our cylinder. Gonna go ahead and rotate on the X, put that on the 90. Gonna go to our front view. Rotate this on the Z. Scale this down. Scale up. Just gonna go ahead and duplicate that. Scale this down. Scale it to the X so we can make it wider. And now let's go ahead and line these up. Moving it right over here. Let's go ahead and check that out. It's looking okay. Kind of want to squeeze that down a little bit. Yeah, it's looking better. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and make a chimney. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that. Go to edit mode, scale down that face so we could bring it closer together. I'm also going to scale this upward. And let's go ahead and move this back here. Scaling the chimney up. And since I know that most likely my shots are going to be of this front face, I'm not too worried about what it looks like in the back, because there's really no point of modeling something that you're not going to see. You know, it's kind of like those, you know, like those movies where you know, you're only building a set where the camera is going to be placed. So I'm kind of like treating it that way just for efficiency's sake. Right now, I really think that we can add a chimney, you know, next to the main tower over here. And again, this is why it's so cool to have this kind of freedom in this early stage where your sketch is so rough that you could still explore shape and proportion in 3D as well. So there's a really cool back and forth. Because we're not in production just yet. We're still in the exploration phase. All right, that's looking pretty cool. I want to see how this looks. Going up like that. Just varying up the proportion. I think that's why I did that. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. Scale this guy down. And then I'm going to combine those, rotate on the Z. And remember guys, this is totally dirty modeling, but this is well enough for us to start concepting from. Going back to our ortho view. You know, I'm actually deciding if I should do a double. Nah, I think single's just fine. Go ahead and duplicate that. Rotate this on the Z. Scale this down, scale it shorter. All right, looking good, looking good. And then now we could go ahead and check it out into our wider angle lens view, our 50 millimeter. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the first person view. And I'm doing this by holding Shift and the little squiggly line next to the one on top of your keyboard. To be honest, I don't know what it's called, but it's that squiggly line that's on the left of your number 1. So as I'm holding Shift, I could go ahead and, you know, make the movement a bit faster. It's looking pretty good. I like it, I like it. See, I'm gonna go ahead and adjust this right here. Yeah, maybe we could get away with it being smaller. You know, just to show some scale. And since I'm liking this kind of shot over here, I'm tweaking the models to best fit that shot. I'm gonna size this up. just to see how it looks. I'm gonna grab that bottom face and size that up. Just move this guy a little bit forward. Kind of like that. And I'm doing this because I want to make sure that I'm keeping my proportions, intact. I just want to make sure to remind myself where these basic proportions are going to be at. And I'm just strictly just laying in those primitives, these base primitives, more so to help guide me where I should focus my details and areas of interest. So I think this is looking pretty good, especially for what we need. So I'm going to go ahead and go to view. And right now we're at a 50 millimeter. I kind of want to exaggerate it, so I'm going to make the lenses a little bit wider. And probably zoom in just a little bit. And bring it back. A little bit too wide for me. Go back to first person mode. Try and look for that shot. Boom. I'm liking it. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead, grab my snipping tool, and I'm going to save this shot. So now it's time to make a texture sheet. So let's go ahead and open up Photoshop. And let's make a 17 by 11 canvas. And the reason why we're making a texture sheet is because it creates this efficiency in our pipeline, and having that efficiency definitely speeds up the process. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to draw every single tile and brick that we're gonna do in this drawing. So it's a lot easier to just make these Lego pieces, if you will, and just have them all pre-made. So when we do get into our drawing, it's just a lot easier to just manipulate, put it into perspective, and fill in the gaps with freehand drawing. So let's get into it. All right, so right now I'm gonna speed up the video just for time's sake, and we're just gonna go ahead and start getting into this texture drawing sheet. So right now I'm going to start off with a basic plank, just basic rectangle planks, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm just adding like little bits of texture onto this wooden plank. I'm going to dupe that, and right now I'm looking at my reference for this design. I'm trying to see how I could just build this wall using a few made sets. So this is definitely gonna help speed the process, because I'm just trying to find efficiency at this point. So right now I'm just creating that wall. And I'm constantly looking at proportion. I'm trying to avoid that 50-50 type of split, and that's why you see me lowering down that plank. So I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this, create that nice, awesome V design, that V support design. I'm gonna repeat it on the other side and extend the wall a little bit. Looking at my left screen for reference. Gonna merge those layers together, keep it nice and clean. And right now I'm just starting at that stone base. The stone base on all the houses. I'm just paying attention to the big, medium, and small proportions. And I want to vary up the sizes in these rocks. Because these stones are natural. Because back in the day, it was a lot harder for you to like produce very clean stone planks. So a lot of them were just basically found. So having this stone base be more organic, that's kind of where I'm trying to hit. I'm duplicating a section of the wall, but at the same time, I'm trying to vary up the edges so it doesn't look too copy and paste. Paying attention to the silhouette. And I'm just blending it, all blending. I'm just lining it up. And just filling in the gap. So I'm just putting it against the wooden wall just to fill in that gap, because I don't want to stretch the texture to pixelate the design, and also you're just stretching your design at that point. So it's actually better just to grab a portion, copy it, and then extrude from there, rather than just Control-T'ing and just stretching your texture. All right, looking at my reference on the left, just so I could start on the next texture. So right now I'm gonna start doing the roof. I'm gonna start building a roof out. I was looking at the tiles and like the different sizes of these tiles and how they're being laid on top of each other. So like I'm just duplicating that one row of tile and I'm just shifting it over, because I noticed that in the reference, these tiles are overlapping each other. So they're not just straight lined up equally. So I'm just shifting it back and forth, and you see me here just flipping the texture as well. Gives it more of an organic look. Right now I'm just adding some thickness, some overlap, so I'm erasing some of these lines. Fixing the silhouette. Just giving it that clear edge. just duplicating that whole section, blending it by erasing the edge of the previous one, the previous texture. And like right over here, this is where I wanted to start putting that roof cap. So I'm designing the roof cap, making sure that I vary up the shape. And this stuff is really cool because, man, it's literally just like Legos. You're building the pieces. So eventually when you do get to the real drawing, you're not spending that much time drawing all of this stuff in perspective. Because just imagine drawing all those tiles in perspective. Oh man, it's gonna be a nightmare. So right now, I'm just trying to make another wall based off of my current wall. So I'm just using it as like a base. And I'm trying to make a new design from here. Yeah, I was thinking about maybe like a curved support versus the one on top. It's just more of that V shape. Duplicating the planks into threes and then flipping it. Just trying to line it just straight. Adding bits of texture to show that it's wood. Doesn't have to be too much texture. Don't want to make it too noisy. Because I'm also keeping in mind that my roof and my stone base has a lot of detail. So I want to make sure that the walls themselves are not as detailed as those two textures. And right over here, I'm starting to make a door. I realized that the widths of the planks were too uneven. It's fine having unevenness, but that time it was too uneven. Adding the supports of the door. And then right over here, I want to make an archway on top. So I'm just grabbing the marquee tool and then stroking the marquee tool to make that curve. And I just duplicated that curve to add thickness. And like when we're creating shapes, it's always try to pay attention to the thickness of the material. Because just beveling a simple box could make it seem like it has more form. So just keeping that in mind, that any shape doesn't just have the shape, but there are lines in between, like the double lines that give it that beveled edge. So right now I was just checking all the layers just to merge them together. And over here, we're going to start making windows. Like, notice I'm just reusing assets. Even though I'm making new assets, I'm reusing those new assets. And I'm just trying to make this process as efficient as it can be. Right now I'm just cleaning up. Cool, just extending the canvas, making more room. And now we're gonna go ahead and start making a chimney. So when it comes to the texture sheets, I'm trying to make assets that I know that I'm gonna reuse in our drawing. And that's what's so great about doing the quick sketch phase earlier, because you're pre-planning where you're gonna go. And because we know where we're gonna go, it's a lot easier for us to pick out the ingredients that we need. Because it's like, just imagine cooking a dish and you don't even know what that dish is, right? So it's a lot better if we know where we're gonna head towards to before we even start, creating assets and trying to be efficient. It's a lot easier to know where you're heading first. And like right over here, I know that I'm gonna add some cracks and some details that I don't want to painstakingly draw later on. So I'm thinking about the in-between cracks that we're gonna later on use. And this part is a lot of fun. It's really nice just to, put a movie on the background or listen to some music and just, doodle away. So right now I'm just looking at what I'm missing. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and extend the canvas and start getting into doing environment textures. So right here, I'm starting off with the cloud. Again, thinking that big, medium, and small. It's always good to look at that proportion scale and just keeping that scale in mind. And notice how I start off with a large cloud first, and then I'm adding in the smalls, and then repeating that same idea. So like large and then small. I always go from big to small. Right now I'm also playing with gesture and rhythm. So I know that I'll be using clouds that kind of show rhythm. So I'm trying to also create assets that show that rhythm as well. So it's just constantly repeating that rhythm. See, I'm just trying to enforce that gesture as well. So that's why I went ahead and drew another big cloud that follows that gesture. And over here, I'm again just doing a tapering, like a tapering shape of the cloud. So I'm heading back in. So that's cloud number 1. So now I'm going to start making trees. And again, when I'm making these textures, always looking at reference, looking at the Miyazaki reference and the Your Name reference, seeing how their leaves look and where to put those details and where to condense all the leaves. I'm constantly fixing the silhouette, because at the end of the day, silhouette is the first thing that we read. And if you notice in my clouds and my trees, there's not much detail on the inside of the shape. Most of the detail or most of the information is outside of the shape. And it reads like a full-on cloud, and this reads like a full-on tree. So right now, again, using the same techniques as before with the wall, where I'm just reusing the assets, but just changing the silhouette, changing the orientation of it just by a little bit already feels like a different tree. So now, starting with the rock, first off, I start with the big shape and I start adding in form. Constantly thinking about big, medium, small, and now I'm thinking about overlaps as well. So I'm overlapping small rocks in front of the large ones, adding more mediums, and then I'm also indicating lines to show form. Because those little details, or those little lines that run across the form, shows good volume. So we know how thick an object is. And just by having these kind of lines, I already know that it's just gonna show more volume. So again, doing another rock with similar technique. But now I'm thinking about variation of this rock. And I know that since the first rock is more square, now I want to bring up a larger, now I want to emphasize a more triangular rock. And then now we're going to move on to bushes. And I thought, hey, you know what? We could totally just use the leaves from the trees and create a bush. Like all we need is to just take out the tree trunk and change the proportion, and there you go. Now it's a bush. Cool. And that's all you basically need for your asset sheet. Let's go ahead and start doing the refinement pass. So in the refinement pass, we're just gonna go ahead and grab our screenshot, drop it in, scale it to the right size, and also just turn down the opacity. I'm gonna set up my workstation correctly with my texture sheet up above. Gonna go ahead and drop in that perspective grid. Right now I'm trying to find the horizon line. Just matching the horizon line. Just scooting over that grid, lining it all up. Duplicating the grid and matching it on the other side. Inverting it. All right, now we're ready to draw. Just now lowering the opacity of the grid, making a new layer, grabbing my brush, sizing it down to a 3. And at this point, I'm just drawing in the big main shapes, silhouette. And then as I'm starting off, I'm just paying attention to how the structure is being laid in. So I'm thinking about the framing. And right over here, I'm just going into the base of the tower, adding in those big shapes, the big basic shapes. I didn't like how that prism or that triangle was sitting in, so I wanted to pop it out. I'm constantly looking at the silhouette. Throwing in a guy there, quick scale reference. Laying in the door, just seeing where it should be fit in. Now I'm just adding in, just blocking in all the other buildings. Yeah, just blocking the big main shapes. And it's always good to start off like this, where you're just laying in just the basic shapes. And on this part, I'm trying to figure out, maybe I should pop in another roof to the side. And I'm thinking about, how is this tower going to be built? So I'm adding a frame, thinking about overlaps. I also want to offset the left to the right, so I added a smaller building to extrude out as well. Now I'm just going to start using the asset. So after getting my basic block ends out, I started to use the asset sheet, and I realized that I need to get the right scale. So I duplicated the texture, and now I'm fitting it right into the roof. Just duplicating that same side, matching the perspective. And just masking. Now I'm working on the smaller roof. And then now I'm going to use my asset, my texture sheet to now lay in the caps of the roof. Making sure my layers are all cleaned up. It's always good to work with a file with the least amount of layers. Then it starts to get really messy if you don't keep it under control. You know, it's kind of like cycling through every single layer. Just because it's not managed well, it takes a lot of time. So like right now I'm trying to pop the silhouette of this roof. I'm constantly thinking about what reads clear. And if it doesn't read clear, then I make sure that it does by, again, clean silhouette, clean edges. So I'm over here adding little bits of supports. I'm thinking about, how is this being set in? How is this piece of tower being held? Or I mean, not tower, but like how does this piece of like building that is extruding being held? Adding more detail in the crevices. And this is where I'm starting to think about grouping of detail. Because as I'm blocking things in the beginning, I'm also thinking about where my details will lie. And I'm kind of already mapping out where I want my details to be. And I'm adding these smaller windows because I want to see how I could transition those details. So like we have a lot of detail on the top of the roof. And I know that I want to keep the main tower or the main body of the tower to be simple. So I'm trying to find ways to put just a little bit amount of detail where it doesn't compete with the roof. And I'm trying to see how I could lead your eye to that detail. And that's why you see me playing with the windows, and hopefully that kind of shows you the rhythm of where I want your eyes to lead. I'm making some gestures of where to put that rhythm. So like when I'm working on areas that don't require too much thinking, quote unquote, like thinking, kind of like just laying down the roofs, laying down the textures, it doesn't really require that much thinking. So as I'm laying the tiles of the roof, I'm constantly thinking about, okay, how can I push rhythm? How can I lead your eye to the focal areas? And what are the key points of interest that I want to lead the viewer? So right now I'm just duplicating the roof tiles, being as efficient as I can. Now I'm working on the silhouette, capping them off using the texture sheet. And having the texture sheet just goes by really fast. And what's so cool is that this process actually works for like any phase of, it could work for any phase of art. Like it could be used for paintings, quick mood paintings, even refinement paintings. Like even high finished matte paintings. This process could be used for any of those. So really understanding this process could definitely benefit you from just working efficiently. The more efficient you are, the more you can handle, and the more work you can get. So right now I'm just adding in those supports because I'm also trying to find ways to put detail. So the whole idea is that I want all the detail focused on the top portions of the building. So I'm just trying to find ways to put that detail, but at the same time, the detail needs to make sense. So I thought, okay, maybe adding supports to the smaller buildings that stick out of the towers makes sense. And it also hits the detail grouping that I want. So I'm just adding a wall using the texture sheet, adding more planks. So like right now I'm just trying to map out where these supports are, because just by placing where the supports are, it's a lot easier for me to start just slapping on walls. And again, just capping off those roofs, finishing them off. Fixing that silhouette, that edge. even when I create new assets, I'm still reusing those new assets. So always trying to find ways to be more efficient. I know that this is going to be a focal area, so I'm trying to make this area a bit more detailed. Matching the perspective of the supports. Now I'm going ahead and adding the door. Yep, I realized that I didn't fix the silhouettes on the rest of the roof, so I'm addressing those. Adding more of the supports. Now I'm also thinking about transitions. So when it comes to transitions, I'm thinking about like, okay, how are these two connection points connecting? Like, how is the tower connecting with the roof? And how's the roof being inset into that tower? I wanted to create like a more pronounced focal area. So I wanted to break up that kind of like boring square shape, that square cube. So over here, I'm trying to add like an awning that sticks out just to break that silhouette. And it can honestly be anything. So my main focus is just to break that silhouette. And if you think about it that way, it's a lot easier. Not everything needs to be a specific item when you're designing, but if you just kind of keep in mind that breaking the silhouette, having good proportion of shape, it just looks right. So again, I'm just texturing, placing it into perspective. But yeah, just imagine having to draw in all the little bricks in perspective without using the asset, without using the texture sheet. Oh man, it's gonna take forever. So yeah, totally use this to your advantage. So right now I'm just laying in this wall. And I'm just trying to find a right design for this. And I didn't like it, so I'm gonna toss it. And I'm going back to the foundation of just putting in the structure, because the structure is kind of like a roadmap. And if you noticed, I'm always trying to find roadmaps to help me get to an answer. So if I can't get to the answer right away, I go back to my roadmap. And in this instance, the roadmap is the structure. See, again, I'm also trying to like fit in the details on top of or below the awning, and that also didn't work. So I just eliminated, found another solution, and moved on. And right now I'm just trying to clean up some lines. Any overlapping lines, I'm just trying to clean it up. I'm trying to find a way how to incorporate this door a bit better. And I really don't like that top. I don't like the way how it's being connected. So I just eliminated it and kept on going. Just doing more cleanup, making sure all the overlaps are nice and tidied up. I'm also thinking about how is that brace going to connect with that wall. So I'm going to have that support brace go through that building. I also wanted to add some reinforced structure or reinforced supports on the awning. Matching the same width of that face. And then I'm going to go ahead and start adding more supports on that brace. And again, using the same building brace or the building supports. And also I thought this was a great opportunity for me to put in some detail in that corner. Because right now everything around it is very simple. So I'm trying to condense that detail in that corner. Making sure all the overlaps are cleaned up. Putting supports on the other side as well. Just want to repeat the same tower support. So I literally just grab the same support, duplicate it. I'm just trying to find more ways to overlap as well. So that's why you saw me overlapping that support. So now it really feels like the top brace is sitting on top of the vertical support. I'm also planning on having a focus area of detail in this region. And notice how I'm not splitting everything in 50/50s. I normally try to break things into thirds. Cleaning up that roof, popping out that edge. Edge is very important. Just adding more detail into that roof area, just adding more structure, more wood planks. Yeah, I wanted to do something different on this area. So I thought adding these these curved supports would be a good accent. Because when it comes to like focal areas, it's always good to put something unique. But when you're putting something unique, you should also have a priority of what is more unique. Because if every focal area or every focal point is just as unique as the other, then it's very hard to know what to look at because there's no priority. So putting a priority on what focal point gets what is very important. And it all comes back down to your earlier sketch too. These are things that you could start thinking about when you're in your rough stage sketch. So after getting most of the building in, now I'm going to start to lay in the stone base. And again, I'm just worrying about one side of the stone base first. And then I'm going to start worrying about the other side, just to keep it efficient. Now it's starting to come together. Now I'm trying to find all the layers and group. Doing some more layer management. Gonna mask out any of the overlaps. Now I'm gonna hit the silhouette, the edge, to really pronounce what is the base and what is the building. And as I'm doing this, I'm really just squinting my eyes as well. I want to see like what catches my eye the most. So if I see something that is unclear, I try to clarify it as soon as possible. And how do you clarify it? Edge. And it's all about that silhouette. Now I'm getting to that stage where I'm trying to make sense of a lot of things, so that's why you see me zooming in and trying to understand like how these transitions work. Now I'm just cleaning up the file, merging all the layers, because it seems like it's good to go for me. Normally I would keep layers if I wasn't too sure, but because I was sure in this direction, I ended up collapsing most of the layers. Now I'm thinking, okay, I need something on that focal area, that main priority focal areas. And I'm trying to find a way how to make it really pop. The first thing that I'm focusing on is again that silhouette. So any decision that I'm making for something to pop or something to read really well is immediately going to that silhouette. So as you can see over here, since I wanted this tower to be more prominent and to be like the star, the first thing I do is I start to address the silhouette first. And to me, adding a smaller personal tower is going to help really sell that and kick that that silhouette out. Just grabbing the texture again. And because I know that the building is very small, I'm not going to use that huge texture sheet. So that's why I just cut a part of it or a piece of it and just laying it all in. Now I'm dressing the edges. Putting in the remaining supports. And then I was trying to think of, okay, what if I add another window? Just so it could be different from the other building next in front. Because I felt like the design before, it's getting a little bit too close. So I want to change it up. And now I'm starting to address the chimney. And as I was addressing the chimney, I noticed that the silhouette, it was too small. Like if you squint your eyes, the 3D model silhouette versus the smaller building to the left has very similar proportion. So that's why you see me just break out of that 3D model and extend the chimney, because I'm trying to avoid the same proportion. And the reason why is because if you have similar proportions throughout your whole piece, your piece just looks very flat. All right, now I'm trying to clean everything up. Now I'm focusing on the silhouette. So I want to make something more prominent in this area because it is my focal point. And I'm trying to think of ways to make that silhouette more interesting. So that's why I added the flag, because we already have the flag on the smaller tower, or smaller added on tower. So I want to repeat that same kind of language onto the main tower. And like right over here, I'm going to start to add in some smoke. And right now I'm looking at the proportions of the shape and making sure that none of the shapes are repeating as well. I'm also thinking about overlaps. So that's why you see me making sure that those overlaps read well. And then I also want the smoke to kind of lead back to the building. And that's why you see me refining that edge, or that refining that point to point back at the building. So using the same process of just reusing your asset, of just reusing your texture sheet. So right here, even though I'm reusing the same asset, I'm also still trying to find ways to make it different. Like, I'm still changing the outer silhouette, because the last thing you want to do is look at a drawing or a painting and then have someone notice that all you did was just copy and paste. Reusing an asset's good, but making sure that you could change it up and just using it as a base is something that we want to aim for. So right now I'm just toning down the 3D just so I could get a better look at my line drawing. I'm also expanding the canvas because now I'm more focused onto the details. So we're getting into that detail phase where I'm starting to add some weathering. But as I'm adding weathering, I'm following the form of the shape. I'm also paying attention again to that silhouette. So I'm thinking about just following that volume, even as when I'm detailing and putting on some grime, some little streaks. I'm also thinking about volume and form. And I'm strategically placing these details in areas where there's still that grouping of detail, right? Like, so we know that where all the roofs are hitting and all the top of the roofs are hitting, that's where the most detail is. So even when I'm doing weathering on a more simple part of the tower, I'm still grouping the details in those areas, in the more complex areas. And to me, I think this part is really, really fun, because this is where you could really start set dressing and giving your design more personality, just depending on how worn out it is or how well kept it is. And right now you can see me start utilizing that brick detail that we did earlier. And again, if you notice, I'm only focusing details in certain areas again. And even though I'm reusing the assets, I'm still modifying it, still changing it, so it doesn't look too copy and paste. And over here, I'm just using a mask. I'm quickly laying all those bricks in and then just masking them in and out. And masking is a great way to keep things more organic, because you don't have, like, I guess, the fear to ruin your texture. There's more freedoms to, like, make mistakes and try things out. And then over here, I'm using the same masking tool, but now I'm just blacking it out. So then I'm only brushing in the details that I want to be shown. Yeah, I love hitting the corners on these. This is really fun. You know, just giving more personality to the building. Because, like, I'm pretty sure back in the day, they didn't have, like, building cleaners, you know, and they weren't constantly upkeeping this tower. So definitely you'll see some wear and tear. Yeah, I definitely realized that this technique was working a lot better than just slapping on the texture. So that's why I'm really utilizing the black mask out. Making sure it's in perspective. Now just cleaning up all the layers, just merging all the layers, because I'm at a point where I'm happy with it. Hitting some edge weathering, but with the purpose of following the form. So, like, right over here, I'm adding more thickness. Trying to make the rhythms flow better. Yeah, I was realizing that the details were starting to look the same, so I wanted to break that up. Adding more details to the focal area, but not too much. I don't want to compete it with the roof, so I'm just adding just a little bit. Fixing that silhouette, adding thickness to the windows is very important. Because the problem with texture sheets is that if you're not careful, you can make something look really flat if you're not addressing the width, the depth of the object. So like I'm adding depth to all these planks right here too. Adding more weathering. Adding more details to go back into space to really push that form. Beveling the supports, cleaning up edges. Yeah, this support didn't look right. I felt like the perspective was a bit off, so now I'm changing it. Now I'm addressing the chimney and its details. And remember, it's totally fine to like redesign some of your already designed assets, because remember, you're not married to any of this. It's always good to adjust for the better. Now I want to pop out the silhouette. So I'm like trying to find a way where I'm just putting a window opening just to give me an opportunity to pop that silhouette. Now I'm getting into the environment. So first off, throwing in the rocks. Just laying it all in. I didn't really like the way how I did that. It felt like it was too competing. So I reversed it. Now I'm filling in the gaps. Fixing the form cracks because it felt like it was creating the same shape on the internal shape, so I wanted to vary that up. And I wanted to add a little bit of a point to that rock because I want to point at the architecture. So these are kind of like, and if you were to think about it in like acting terms, the rocks are like the supporting actors. So whatever I'm doing with the environment is only to help support the main piece, which is this tower. So even when I'm working on the ground, I'm making sure that all the rhythms go and lead to the tower, like to the front door. And that's why you can see this swooping rhythm, this S-shaped rhythm of the floor leading right to the door. I'm also adding these plans to give some good overlaps, because adding these overlaps would definitely help sell depth. And I also lowered the opacity of the tower because now my main focus is on the environment. And for me, I like to section off my focuses, because if I have everything on, then my mind tends to lead everywhere. Whereas if I could just do singular focuses on zones, on areas, doing it this way for me is a lot easier. And I'm not as afraid to make more overlaps when I tone other things down. So I think this is a great way to combat that. So right now I was deciphering what I should do and how I should integrate this environment better. And the first thing I start thinking of is silhouette and overlap. Fixing some areas up. I added that rock because I noticed on the left hand side, the left and the right hand side were actually having the same silhouette shape. So I added that rock so I could break that silhouette. I didn't want it to look like it was too planned. So right now I'm just containing the floor. I didn't want the ground to completely be opened, because I'm thinking of this piece as a almost kind of like a centerpiece where the rest of the environment doesn't really matter. So that's why I wanted to close off that ground. So now I'm starting to add the trees, and it's already starting to feel like it's fleshed out. It has really nice rhythms of these verticals. So having the verticality of the tower, and then having the counterbalance with the trees and the rocks definitely sells that variety in shape, which is very pleasing to the eye. So yeah, I'm trying to find ways to lead the trees back up to the tower. So it's kind of like, in a way, a pointing mechanism. I wanted to make sure that the tree looks different. Yeah, I didn't really like that tip, so I'm gonna go ahead and change it. Okay. Turning back on the line to make sure everything looks okay. Yeah, I felt like the right trees were taking a little bit too much of attention. So I wanted to tone it back down, make the silhouette a little bit different as well, because I was copy and pasting a lot, so I wanted to make it different. So now we're gonna start with the clouds. I'm gonna go ahead and grab it from the texture sheet. And right now I'm really just trying to look for that nice counterbalance. And I'm trying to find a way to frame the tower using this cloud. And like right now I'm just tweaking the shape of the cloud and trying to find more interesting ways to frame the tower. Putting a little bit more details and refining the cloud, and making sure that the underplane of the cloud shows. Right now I really like that rhythm that kind of points back into the tower, so I'm trying to emphasize that. Like adding more overlaps. And then I was thinking it might be a good idea to also add in a smaller cloud. And I'm constantly thinking about big, medium, and small, even in the clouds. So for every area, I'm always thinking about big, medium, and small. I like the rhythm from the little clouds on the top right, so I'm trying to repeat that in the middle as well. Just refining the silhouette of the clouds now. And yeah, I just want to do some few adjustments. I felt like the small cloud was a little bit too close to the chimney smoke, so I ended up wanting to adjust it just a bit. Now I'm continuing that dotted cloud, just continuing the rhythm. Now I'm just refining some of these cloud edges. I'm also exaggerating the bottom as well, the bottom plane. Yeah, I realized that the smokestack was a bit too similar size as the top one. And now I wanted to add some birds because I want to show some more of that scale. And I think adding birds is a great way to show off how large this tower is. Kind of gives it a sense of epicness, you know? So I'm sprinkling birds around just to keep your eyes focused on the tower. So it's kind of like encircling the tower. Making sure that all the birds don't look the same or have the same spacing. Yeah, this part is really relaxing at this point, because the image is already coming out. The image is already figured out. Most of the problems are already solved. So this last 20%, the icing on the cake, is a lot of fun. It's pretty relaxing at this point. So I'm at that last 20% of the drawing, and I'm just adding in like little details that show interest. And again, I'm still trying to find ways to make the silhouette better. And notice how I'm not really going back into the tower, but I'm still trying to refine that silhouette. So adding the trees in the back so that I could show that there is an opening. Now I'm doing some cleanup. giving it an overall look to see if I'm missing anything. So going back in, erasing a lot of the overlaps that need clarity. And now I'm starting to do the black accents. And now when I'm doing black accents, I'm really mainly focusing on key points of where I want the eye to go. So right now when I do black accents, I'm also hitting the underplanes to really pop out the shape. And I'm also I'm also like seeing how thick each black accent is, because every shape matters, and paying attention to the thickness of each shape will add more, or add more depth. Because if all the shapes start to look the same, then it starts to look flat. And we're trying to avoid that right now. So right now I'm just hitting all the crevices with the black accents. I'm also doing it in clear objects that are overlapping. Yes, and hitting the windows, hitting underneath the roofs. Yeah, really bringing it back to the focal areas. Double checking, trying to see like what else can I make better. It's getting close to the final stretch. And I was just over here testing it out, squinting my eyes as if I was painting as well. And I'm just seeing like where all the details should be. And I ended up liking it. I think it was a good call. Doing really minor adjustments with the accents. And there you go. Finished drawing. Thank you guys so much for sitting through the tutorial. Hope you guys learned from this, and see you next time. Thank you.